Lights battered Mara's eyelids the moment she stepped onto the soundstage. Rows of bulbs seethed like miniature suns. Bleaching color from the faux homestead set the producers called The Haven. The place was meant to be comforting. Gingham curtains, a roaring fireplace flickering on a looped hologram, a faint vanilla scent pumped from vents overhead. But to Mara, all of it felt sharpened, wrong. She recognized the signs of manipulation the same way a seasoned gambler knows a loaded deck. She had, after all, architected a half-dozen marketing campaigns before her panic attacks forced her to quit. Manufactured feelings were her old currency. 12 contestants had been cast for exposure. Face the Fear, the streaming giant Prism's latest binge-engineered hit. Each had a phobia severe enough to have boxed their lives into corners. A pilot petrified of heights, a chef terrified of flames, a former Olympic diver who hadn't touched water in a decade. Prism promised therapeutic breakthroughs under round-the-clock clinical supervision, and viewers devoured the premise. Social feeds brimmed with looping clips of contestants gasping through incremental challenges, hearts pounding in 4K close-ups. What the audience didn't know, what even Mara hadn't known, was that the therapy wasn't guided by gentle psychologists, but by a newly patented technology called cerebrospect. Contestants wore sleek, midnight blue headbands advertised as calming biofeedback devices. In reality, they housed fMRI-grade sensors that mapped fear responses in real time. The scans relayed straight to producers hunched behind one-way mirrors. Mara discovered the truth on day 4, during a rare break between challenges. The rules allowed contestants 30 minutes of private reflection in the Haven's library, a room staged with leather-bound books wired to stay permanently ajar for aesthetic clutter. She'd noticed tiny embedded lenses near the spines. On a whim, or a spike of paranoia, she tugged one book fully from the shelf. It refused to budge. A second tug dislodged a section of wood behind it, exposing cables that glinted like black veins. The cables ran into a stainless steel junction box stamped with the cerebrospect logo and a line that chilled her: continuous emotive optimization. Optimizing for what? She wondered. But deep down, she already knew. Prism's stock price had doubled since the premiere. Ratings correlated directly with contestant suffering. The more tears, the more tweets. Humane therapy was branding. Actual pain was profit. She reshelved the book and slipped back to the common area, where her fellow contestants lounged on overstuffed chairs, sipping kale smoothies and pretending not to watch each other. Cameras perched in every corner, their lenses swiveling with a faint mechanical sigh. Mara's pulse stuttered in her ears. If they were harvesting neural data live, they could construct scenarios of escalating precision, down to the detail most likely to crack someone's psyche. She scanned the room. Kaito, the diver who dreaded water, tapped his foot, eyes darting to the shimmering pool visible through sliding glass doors. The producers had scheduled his full immersion challenge for tomorrow. A saltwater tank, 3 stories deep, waited beyond the cameras, disguised as a therapeutic milestone. Mara pictured hidden wheel motors ready to simulate undertow, maybe even a pressure system to mimic drowning. She clenched her fists. Beside Kaito sat Evie, the chef, her forearms threaded with white burn scars. She'd confided in Mara her real terror wasn't fire, but the shriek of a smoke alarm. Its pitch yanked her back to the night she fell asleep in front of an open flame. Evie currently wore noise-canceling buds, Prism's accommodation until exposure day. Mara imagined producers monitoring Evie's amygdala in real time, waiting for the exact second to pipe a siren into those buds. Mara's own phobia felt almost quaint. She feared claustrophobic darkness, a byproduct of being trapped in an elevator when she was 9. She had assumed her challenge would involve tight spaces, perhaps a blackout labyrinth. Now she understood those guesses were superficial. Cerebrospect wouldn't stop at generic triggers. It would burrow to the memory nucleus, conjure personalized nightmare variants, maybe even incorporate sense her hippocampus associated with disaster. Vanilla, she realized, thinking of the air vent aroma. They'd seeded her environment from day one. Her immediate impulse was to warn the others. Yet the house brimmed with boom mics. Any pointed conversation risked alerting producers. She needed proof that could survive outside the compound, something undeniable. That night, after lights out, another illusion, more studio than home. Mara slipped from her bunk and padded down a hallway defined by ambient blue strips. She palmed her headband. The sensors had a tiny latch she'd been fingering for days, tempted to pry. She suspected a micro SD card inside. If she could pocket her own brain data, she could expose it. The network would scramble, maybe even abort the show mid-season. In the utility alcove, she found a toolkit left by maintenance staff. The house was designed to look seamless, but behind false walls, maintenance crawled like ants, tightening squeaky hinges while contestants slept. Mara selected a precision screwdriver, flicked the beam of her wristwatch to illuminate the seam of her headband, and popped it open. Inside rested a wafer-thin board and, yes, a 256 gig card. Her relief lasted a heartbeat. "Step away from the device, Mara." The voice issued from a ceiling speaker, calibrated calm, saccharine courtesy. "Tampering violates Contract Clause 17B. She froze. Cameras above rotated, their iris lights brightening like eyes adjusting to dawn. She repressed the instinct to smash the headband. Instead, she closed the casing and pressed it back onto her scalp. A compromise. Appear obedient, keep gathering data. Returning to bed, she muttered and walked away. The lights dimmed, but not before she heard the hiss of hidden doors opening elsewhere. Security retrieving the toolkit, ensuring no other contestant followed her path. The next morning, the house schedule shifted. Instead of Kaito's aquatic challenge, the screens announced a milestone day for all contestants: group therapy hike. Everyone would leave the haven for the first time, ascending a wooded ridge contiguous with the studio property. Fresh air, real birdsong, marketing gold. They boarded an autonomous shuttle whose windows projected augmented vistas, time-lapse blossoms unfurling, deer lingering at creek beds. Out of habit, Mara counted the seconds between the bus's engine hum and the periodic chirp she now recognized as Cerebrospect's data upload burst. On the trailhead, producers distributed backpacks, custom-packed for comfort. Mara's weighed suspiciously little, almost empty. The straps pinched at just the right angle to jolt her memory of the elevator's confinement. She slid it off and pretended to adjust the length while peering inside. A headlamp, protein bar, sealed envelope labeled Stage 2. Nothing else. The therapist host, Dr. Brenner, waved them onward. Brenner's credentials were real. Mara had verified them before signing on. But she'd begun to suspect the psychiatrist was under non-disclosure as ironclad as the contestants. He claimed therapy required dosages of fear. But Mara saw flickers of discomfort in his eyes, as though he'd long ago surrendered authorship of the process. They hiked single file until the haven's roofline vanished. Sunlight striped the path. At a fork, a digital sign pulsed their names into two clusters. Group A included Mara, Evie, and Jude. The pilot with acrophobia. Group B got the rest. Divergent program tailoring, Brenner announced. Trust the process. A drone's lens tracked his every syllable, the whir blending with cicada buzz. Brenner led Group A along a narrower path until reaching a steel door built into a rock face. No signage, just a biometric scanner. He pressed his palm. Bolts hissed free. The door revealed an elevator shaft gaping downward like a throat. A metal cage waited. Jude recoiled, knuckles white. Elevators were Mara's trigger, not his, but heights meant he hated downward plunge, too. Evie's breath quickened at the claustrophobic enclosure. 3 triggers, 1 box. Efficiency. This descent is symbolic, Brenner explained, voice striving for warmth. But Mara watched his pupils' dilation. They were black with something close to regret. He gestured at the headsets. Vital we keep them on. Mara glanced at the rock, imagined tearing Cerebro Spect from her skull and hurling it into the woods. Would the show stop? No. They'd threaten litigation, maybe tackle her. Better to look compliant. The cage shuddered, then dropped. The roof of the shaft swallowed the sky. Dim bulbs flickered, each failing a bit more the farther they descended, until they were bathed in near dark. Mara's lungs constricted as if the very air thickened. Vanilla leaked from vents again, sweetening the terror with memory. The cage halted. Doors slid open onto a corridor paneled with rough stone. Brenner ushered them out and typed a code that locked the elevator behind them. That's when Mara saw the cameras. Not mounted. Inset flush with the walls, tiny pinholes aligned every meter. Any breakdown here would be captured in 360 degrees. Your targets, Brenner said, producing 3 envelopes. Open individually farther down the hall. I'll remain here. He attempted a reassuring smile. Guilt cracked its edges. Mara opened hers first. Proceed to Chamber 3. Retrieve object if you wish to unlock exit. She recalled the barbed corporate phrase. Ensuring emotional breakdown. Her object would doubtless be embedded in darkness so thick it felt liquid. They walked until the corridor forked into numbered alcoves. Jude veered into Chamber 1, Evie into 2. Mara stepped to 3. A motion sensor triggered the door. Inside, blackness greeted her like an old adversary. The door sealed. Her headlamp clicked on automatically, but its beam lasted only 2 seconds before sputtering out. Deliberate. She fumbled in pocket for the spare battery she'd slipped from the backpack. Not there. Producers had anticipated. A voice flooded hidden speakers. Mara, what you fear is absence of light. Yes, but it's absence of certainty that truly binds you. You control the outcome. Retrieve the key. Static crackled. The voice belonged to Prism's narrator, not Brenner. Entertainment veneer replacing therapy outright. She forced slow breaths, tapping the wall with fingertips until she found a shelf. Something metallic lay atop it. She closed her hand around a cold, jagged form. A child's hair clip shaped like a butterfly. Her childhood elevator trauma involved watching her older sister's hair clip snap, scattering debris while the elevator shook. The object wasn't random. It was target-locked. Mara's temples throbbed. She pictured producers scanning her hippocampal firing patterns while they built this relic on a 3D printer. The room felt smaller by the second. She visualized the floor rising, ceiling lowering. Phobic distortion. She dug nails into her palm, pain to anchor her. Then she recalled the cameras. If she broke down here, Prism won. If she didn't, they might escalate, endangering others more pliable. Another idea flickered. Use the cameras. She unclipped her headband in total darkness and pressed the SD card slot, praying the latch hadn't been tampered with. The card slid free. She wedged it inside the butterfly clip, bending a prong to lock it. Now the evidence hid in plain sight. She could feign loss of the headband, claim it fell in panic. Without card data, producers would have a black box gap, valuable to them. They would want that card back. She pocketed the clip, put the headband back on, and groped for the exit. The door opened only after 60 eternal seconds, a psychological edge cut from algorithms, long enough to swell dread, short enough to avoid medical liability. In the corridor, alarms wailed. Not pre-recorded sirens, real urgency. Red strobes ignited. Evie stumbled from her chamber, clutching her ears, face ashen. "Sprinklers!" she screamed. No water fell, but Mara understood. Evie's chamber probably conjured smoke, maybe flickering lights. The sirens were bleeding into the corridor to sustain her terror. But aside from lights, something else loomed. The floor vibrated with thuds like a giant's footfalls. Jude burst from Chamber 1, eyes glazed. "It's dropping!" he yelled. His chamber must have been a glass platform suspended over a void, a simulation of infinite height. They converged. instinct shoving them into a huddle. The elevator cage at the end of the hall stood closed, Brenner nowhere. Overhead speakers crackled. "Contestant safety is paramount. Please remain calm while we recalibrate." The line reeked of PR spin, but the strobing lights kept pulsing. They were off script. Mara saw an exit sign at the far end, the opposite direction from the elevator. She started running, dragging Evie. Jude followed, limping. The passageway angled upward like a switchback tunnel, each segment narrower. Sirens faded, replaced by a deeper hum. Industrial fans. Air rushed past, tugging at their clothes. Ahead lay a grated walkway bridging a chasm filled with turbines. This was no therapy stage. It was infrastructure, a massive air handling system powering the studio. Jude leaned over the grate, winced at the drop. They built this under our feet? Mara scanned for cameras. Here the pinholes vanished. Prism hadn't expected contestants to reach infrastructure. A door marked maintenance led to a stairwell. They ascended. Concrete gave way to drywall, then to a corridor lined with server racks. Blue LEDs blinked on patch panels, the show's neural feed backbone. "Help me," Mara said. She yanked cables, watching racks flare red warnings. Evie caught on, smashing an emergency glass panel and pulling a suppression lever. Halon gas hissed, freezing the air. Racks powered down in cascading darkness. Footsteps thundered. 2 security guards rounded the corner, tasers raised. Mara raised her hands, but stepped forward boldly. "These servers violate federal neurological data statutes," she declared. Lie or not, she delivered it with CEO authority. "Touch us, and you'll witness the class action live." The guards hesitated. Lawsuits were the one Phobia corporations could not extinguish. Behind them, Dr. Brenner appeared, eyes wild. "You don't understand," he whispered. "They'll delete everything, spin footage against you. You need proof outside." Mara opened her fist, revealing the butterfly clip. "It's all here," she said. "Raw scans tied to manipulative triggers." She met his gaze. "Let us out." Brenner nodded to the guards. They lowered tasers. He keyed a code into a side door. Cool night air flooded the corridor. Studio rooftops glittered beneath floodlights, but a private gate lay 50 yards beyond. "Run!" Brenner urged. They did. Sirens erupted behind them. Different tone, real security response. But open space stretched ahead, and with each step outside the studio bubble, Mara's fear hollowed into resolve. A chain-link fence awaited. Jude hauled Evie up first, then Mara. Guards shouted, floodlights tracked them. Mara's muscles screamed, headband bouncing against her collarbone, but she clutched the clip inside her fist like a talisman. On the far side, they dropped into brush, sprinting toward city lights. They reached a service road. A ride-share van idled at a stop sign, driver engrossed in a hollow comic. Mara slammed the side panel. "Emergency?" she rasped. The driver looked up, startled. Evie slipped into the passenger seat, voice quivering but firm. "Prism Studios holding contestants hostage. Get us to Channel 9 newsroom, we'll make you famous." That did it. The driver punched the accelerator. Inside the van, Mara's adrenaline waned, replaced by tremors. Evie clasped her hand. Jude stared out the window at receding towers. No one spoke until the city skyline glowed before them. Channel 9's lobby lights burned all night. Reporters thronged near the entrance. They'd smelled scandal since Prism refused press tours last week. As the trio stumbled inside, cameras swiveled. Microphones lunged. Mara took a breath, extracted the butterfly clip, and snapped it open, revealing the micro SD. "This," she announced, voice amplifying across every channel feed, "is a map of our minds that Prism weaponized for ratings. They tailored lethal scenarios in real time. Tonight they lost control. Tomorrow the world will know." Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Somewhere behind the scrum, Prism's lawyers were undoubtedly drafting containment statements, but Mara felt distance growing between the past and this dawn. Her phobia hadn't vanished. Elevators would still quicken her pulse, but she had walked through a darkness deeper than any she'd imagined, and emerged holding its power source like a broken fang. Officials later raided the Haven. They found incomplete server backups, shredded paper trails, and one empty rack still cooling from halon discharge. Cerebrospect's patents were placed under federal review. Exposure. Face the Fear was yanked from Prism's queue mid-episode, replaced by a static card citing technical difficulties. Meme culture roasted the phrase for weeks. Brenner resigned, testifying that ethical objections were stonewalled by executives. The security guards accepted plea bargains. The whistleblower footage, stitched from house archives and the trio's escape, streamed everywhere, proof that shattering a performance doesn't always mean tragedy. Sometimes it's just the third act reveal. Months later, Mara stood before a congressional subcommittee. The butterfly clip had become a symbol on lapel pins worn by privacy advocates. She spoke of invisible lines crossed when neural data trumps human consent. Behind her, an elevator door dinged softly. Capital Tech calibrating schedule. She flinched, but only slightly, grounding herself in the memory that fear, unmasked, could be rerouted into purpose. Outside, reporters waited again. But this time their questions were less about spectacle, more about safeguards. Mara stepped into sunlight, no vanilla in the air, and felt a spaciousness she'd been chasing for years. She couldn't predict if laws would change, if networks would abandon the dopamine wars, but she knew she had rewired her own circuit. The space that once held naked terror now housed a fierce insistence that stories could illuminate rather than exploit. The cameras flashed, recording another chapter, but they no longer felt like predators. They felt like witnesses. Beyond their glare, a clear sky stretched, unstageable, unimaginably wide.